You kind of caught me off guard here. Okay. Now, thank you, Lord. Help me. Let me put it very simple. It takes a lot of money to do what we do. Oh, yeah. Well, for example, that's really none of your business. But, hey, you listening to me? Let me give you another example. And I prayed about it, and I thought, back when, and I might add another thing, too. It's a misunderstanding. I'm talking about the Bible. God, I get excited talking about it because I love it. I had to learn this, the demons. Abraham was very, very well. I learned it from him, from the Bible.
There's a foundation in the Bible.
Wait a minute now. The blessing of Abraham. Abraham was extremely wealthy, and he had covenant with God. I'm talking about the Bible. Oh, God, I love this. And I started out standing. My grandfathers. I love the people. Those are the demons. And I understand that. And I love them with all my heart. If you go into the old covenant, and it's full of meanness, it's just full of hell on earth. He made that airplane so cheap for me, I couldn't help but buy it. I love your eyes. Face to face, personally. Just the same as Jesus is very real devil. Rulers of the darkness of this world. God bless, Father bless. But it's a biblical thing, it's a spiritual thing. It doesn't have anything to do with people. And it's full of miracles, and signs, and wonders. It's full of unseen things. Jesus, people, I love people. Dragging some woman down an aisle, it made me so mad I wanted to punch the guy out myself. We wrestle not with people. And I have a lot of natural gas.
Once again, the United States champion of word wrestling entertainment is back for another edition of the Pocket Locker Podcast. I am your host with the most, all the way from the East Coast. And as always, folks, I am in airplane mode. Welcome, everybody. We have got a great show lined up for you. It's so good to see everybody here. Y'all already know what to do. Raise your glasses. Hold on to your asses. It is time to jump into the musical portion of the festivities and catch a vibe as you link up with the gang. All right. First up, we have got this one. Boom. Gang, we're going this way. Oh yeah. It's for the 90s babies.
You have so many relationships in this life, only one or two will last. You're going through all the pain and strife, you turn your back and they're gone so fast. Oh yeah, and they're gone so fast. Yeah. Oh. Oh, so hold on to the ones who really care, 'cause in the end they'll be the only ones there. When you get old, start losing your hair. Can you tell me who will still care? Can you tell me who will still care? Oh, yeah. Ooh, ba, do it up, ba, do ba, do it up, ba, do ba, do it up, ba, do. Oh yeah, ooh, ba, do it up, ba, do ba, do it up, ba, do ba, do it up, ba, do. Oh you don't know. Can you tell me? Oh no. Say you can, but you don't know. Can you tell me? Oh, say you can, but you don't know. Say you can, but you don't know. You don't know, don't know.
I feel that. That's my problem.
Can you tell me? Say you can, but you don't know.
Can you even tell me what umbop means? It's crazy people get away with making these hit songs about some shit nobody even can define or know what it means. What the fuck is umbop? How exactly does one go about bopping? You know, and it's just a made up shit, but it works. But it works because music. Whoa. That's not where we're going next. There's somebody's trying to break out and have a solo moment. That's not that. You stick with the program. You don't go off script on my show. It's not how we do things around here. We got some new shit. That's exactly what it is.
Don't have to be beautiful to turn me on. I just need
Good evening,
your
good evening.
body, baby, from dusk till dawn. You don't need
Good to see you,
experience
CDN.
to turn me out. You just leave it all up to me. I'm gonna show you what it's all about. Don't have to be rich to be my girl. Don't have to be cool to roll my world. Ain't no particular sign I'm more compatible with. I just want your extra time and your kiss. You gotta not talk dirty, baby. You wanna impress me. You can't be too flirty, man. I know how to undress me. Ought to be your fantasy. So maybe you could be mine. You just leave it all up to me, so we could have a good time. Don't have to be rich to be my girl. Don't have to be cool to rule my world. Ain't no particular time compatible with. I just want your extra time and your
Crazy. That was awesome. All right, gang. It is time to jump into the main event of the evening. And gang, tonight, you know how it is. We had a whole show planned as we're planning through the weekend, from the start of it on Friday night all the way through the Blackout and Hot program. But then the YouTube algorithm was like, I think you want to see this. 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 And then you know how it went down. I'm under the wing of fucking Uncle Bobby. So Cousin Jay saw some shit. And then I was like, I think I'm going to have to rant about some shit. So that is how we find ourselves here, in which we're going to be reviewing this genetically modified skeptic video called How Much Do Americans Dislike Atheists? Now, gang, here's the thing that is the situation we find ourselves in. Now, when I see a genetically modified skeptic video, I'm like, genetically modified skeptic. That's one of the good atheist content creators. Oh, I really usually like his stuff. And oh, cool, he's actually going to be talking about how much do Americans dislike atheists. And I'm always complaining about how bigoted everybody is against fucking atheists and how nobody wants to talk about how much everybody fucking hates atheists. And then it's like a fucking Jedi mind trick, because I see the video, and so then I click on it, and I'm like, yeah, it's gonna be good. But gang, I have to keep it 100% real with you. We are under rapid fire, constant fucking non-stop betrayal by the goddamn moderates, gang. And I'm suspicious of everybody. I'm suspicious of everybody. So yeah, I might probably want to bullshit and jump on whoever the fuck he's responding to, but I don't know, gang. I don't know if I could trust this perspective. I don't know. That's why we're gonna react to it. We're gonna react to it in real time, because I don't know anymore. Everybody's I don't trust nobody. I'm very, very distrustful these days. So I'm probably going to be ranting about all of it. If not, then I'm going to find something and rant about that. But look, just know that there's no presumption. There's no presumption of innocence in this situation. I think everybody's guilty until proven otherwise. Gang, shit's just been scary lately, man. Look, people, it's not my fault, man. If people would just stop being assholes and fucking throwing people under the bus, we wouldn't find ourselves in this situation. But let's go ahead and get into this. All right, how much do Americans dislike atheists? Yowzes. That's not the right video, is it?
I grew up in a community that believed that true Christians, aka conservative evangelicals, were the most persecuted group in America, if not the world. There are places in the Bible, I was taught, that say that Christians are persecuted.
All right, I'm going to be a coward on air. You ready? You watch me be a coward on air. See, it's what Randy said. See, I wasn't going to say it. But since Randy said it, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's hard to watch a lot of stuff because they'd be too charitable to the religious people, which means kind of participating in the alt-right movement. So that's just what it is. But it's on Randy. If you don't like what I said, it's Randy's fault. That's why people watch YouTube. People watch YouTube to watch their favorite content creators, throw them under the bus, and blame them for drama in the community. That's what the fucking contract we don't sign says we have to do.
Persecuted, and that we are blessed because we are so persecuted, but that does not mean that we don't suffer at the hand of our persecutors. Most people even believe that if they were persecuted, that meant that they were doing something right. If you were persecuted, that is validation of your status as a true Christian. Now, what persecution looked like to these mostly white, middle-class, conservative Christians was very different than what almost anyone else would consider persecution. Basically, when other people were allowed to live their lives openly and proudly as non-Christians, and when Christians didn't have more privilege than any other social group in the country, that meant that Christians were being persecuted. It's really hard to say how much I bought into this idea. I was also taught that I was incredibly lucky, incredibly privileged to be born in America and to be born into a Christian family. There was really no better lot in life than the one that I was handed. So on one hand, I felt very lucky to be raised the way that I was and very privileged to be in the position that I was born into, but also felt like maybe somewhere out there people are trying to get at me. Maybe I'm going to be in danger if I step outside my Christian bubble.
All right, now this is something I guess I feel like I can relate to. Probably a lot of you guys can relate to. I do think, we should always take into consideration what we believe someone's audience to be. And, I always say genetically modified skeptic stuff is really good for people who are, questioning or new to atheism or, in that earlier part of the journey. And yeah, I think this is still a thing, and I think this is actually a big problem. I think this is like, from my perspective, even now as an atheist, this is like what holds so many Christians back. It's like that fear of identity transformation, that mistrust of the world, that sort of, you're in the world, but you're not of the world. And then you're constantly getting really shameful, harmful messaging about the world. And so it's a little too much to imagine yourself actually now becoming of the world. And hold on, were they right all along? And there's really just so much emotional value judgment wrapped up in all of this that it's really toxic. And we all, I think, not all of us, but a lot of us, they got us while we were still soft in the head or in a vulnerable time of life. And so you kind of grow up in it. Like, looking back at it, like, it feels like it'd be hard to hit me with the Christianity okie doke right now, but obviously, I think when you just grow up in this, those emotions probably get kind of baked in for a lot of us before you're even conscious of what's going on.
My life day to day growing up as a Christian didn't feel like the life of someone who was persecuted at every turn, and yet I was told that I was. It was a bit confusing to have those kind of mixed messages being sent to me. But something that did sink in was the idea that persecution could look like simple disagreement. That perspective, though, was significantly challenged when I eventually lost my faith and became an atheist in secret. Suddenly, I was terrified of having honest conversations with the people that I loved and trusted the most, much less people in my general community in East Texas, where I was living at the time. Never before had I had the experience where if I had revealed what I really thought, revealed my true identity to the people that I loved and trusted the most, I risked being severely socially ostracized, if not entirely cast out of my most important foundational social circles. After all
right, now again, I think this is an incredibly common feeling, and this is what I was thinking about even getting ready to review this on today's show. Because I did see that he does some stuff about some surveys and polls or whatever we'll get into. But this, to me, is the problem, right? This is the real deal, right? Is that feeling that people have that, like, they can't even bear the idea of sharing this with people close to them. And there are so many atheists that still to this day won't tell their family and friends and certain people in their life about the fact that they're not believers. And to me, that's just that is obviously a crazy type of prejudice. I mean, the only thing most of us can even think of, right, is to think about the queer movement and the way people often feel that they have to hide a very important truth about them. So when people let the people in their lives know that they're atheists, they often refer to it as coming out, using the same language. I'm sure there's mixed opinions about that, but the reality that that's what people do lets you know that I think that inherently that they're responding to a strong prejudice as being part of a perceived marginalized group, and it's just it's a wonder to me that we just don't have this conversation more often and more plainly. And I think again, a big part of that is just atheists are really afraid to speak up for themselves.
Well, everyone that I knew and trusted founded their very identity in the idea that Jesus rose from the dead and wanted to have a
What's up,
personal
Jasper?
relationship with them. I had rejected that relationship. So what would that mean for their perception of me after finding that out? So I socially isolated myself. I hid my identity constantly. One time I mentioned at work that I believed in evolution, and I was almost fired. Now, I was working at a Christian homeless shelter where they totally could do that because I signed a written statement of faith in order to work there. But the fact that I almost lost my job over something...
gang, we're here to get through this together. That's exactly where I'm at with these things. It's tough, but at the same time, you know what? It's I'm glad I have you guys here to watch this with. But I'll also just say lately I've just been kind of realizing that we're at a very troubling place, and it's hard to get away from, I guess is what I'm getting at. Like the way certain progressive channels and content creators and leaders and political, like just the whole thing, it's getting hard to find a voice, and there's always just this like, all right, when's the cringe gonna hit? All right, let's roll some tape. I'm glad you guys are here.
that doesn't even entail atheism really confirmed my idea that if I let my true thoughts and feelings slip, then maybe that would be the end of my status in any social group that I ran in. Now, plenty of you who've been following me for a while know that after I moved to a new city, got a new job, found social support from atheist groups I found online, I did eventually come out to my friends and family as an atheist. Some of the responses were really not great, and some of them were a lot better than I expected. But I learned something very crucial in that time that affects my thinking daily, even up to now. That thing was what it was like to actually experience even an ounce of marginalization. Before becoming an atheist, I really did not know what it was like to be ostracized, to have people have unfair biases against me just because of what I think, what I believe, what I look like, etc. I remember thinking back at that time, if this is what it's like to be a kind of marginalized minority that can hide their minority status pretty easily, what is it like to be a marginalized minority that can't? What if I was trans? What if I was black? It made me have more compassion and empathy for those who have experienced marginalization than I was ever even capable of having before. So in this way, becoming an atheist might have been the single most important formative experience on my perspective of issues of social justice, namely that they're important and require constant effort even now. When I've shared this perspective...
Yeah, now this is tough, right? Because it's I didn't realize it was really, really, really that real till them motherfuckers came after me. And, I can't, what am I going to say? Because, I've been one of them, I've just, it's people have that experience and everybody has their own story. And I'm just ranting. I'm literally, there's nothing wrong. I'm just kind of fucking with them. But no, what I actually really want to say is that, like, this is what he's touching on here is actually super important. And I wish I heard more atheists reflect on that part of it. And for me, part of what I felt like, and I don't think it's true, but I do remember having the thoughts, was that there's certain groups that seem privileged, and when they think about leaving the faith or I guess not believing anymore, it's just the intellectual thing. It's just like, oh, I'm not convinced of this proposition. I'm no longer a Christian or whatever it is. And that's it. Whereas I don't if like in the certain like black Christians and in certain groups that it dominates every facet of the family and social structure and all of that shit. There's so many notions of what I'll just speak from my experience, like what the notion of a good black man was, for instance, right? And I'm just telling y'all that the words are so clear. They're just, he has to be serious about his relationship with the Lord. Like that is just the fucking thing that is drilled in certain women, and they pass that shit into their sons very strictly, and then they like live that shit out. You know, your mom be like, yeah, you know, him and but you know, he wasn't the one, and then I knew that he had to be serious about his relationship with the Lord, and this was a good one. You know what I mean? It's crazy. Like the messaging, y'all, is crazy, and so it feels like you are, you know, identifying yourself as something that can cut you off from like the whole shit, like everything. Like it's not just gonna be, oh, why weren't you with us on Sunday? It's just what? Nah, you can't really be what? An atheist? So I don't know. I like that's just been really apparent for me, which is why I've always kind of found the whole apologetic scene like weird as shit, right? Because it's like, dog, in Christian America, we're fucking second-class citizens. Now, what the fuck are we doing sitting around talking about the goddamn, you know, ontological axiology of your epistemology and all this philosophical fucking arguments and bullshit? Like, dog, we're non-believers in America in 2023. Like, gang, please go fuck yourself. Think about the shit that they are. We wake up every day and hear them call our queer fam all types of demons and demonic and all of this shit, that they're against the way of the Lord and against the way God intends things to be. Gang, please go fuck yourself. How do you think they're going to treat us when we tell these motherfuckers there is no God, and we no longer want to have politicians that jerk off Jesus, and we actually want like to build a proper secular godless society so people like us can feel safe? Please go fuck yourself. How do you think they're going to treat us, gang? So can we please have this moment? Like, I'm teasing them, like, but seriously, we all need to have this moment, gang. Being an atheist in this country is fucked up, okay? It really is. So I'm with them on that. All right.
Perspective of mine in the past, I've had some Christians and even some atheists say that no, marginalization is not a real thing that atheists actually have to deal with. There aren't any atheists that are really socially ostracized in the US. I'm just playing the victim for views, apparently. To those people, I say, you don't have to take my word for it, because there's actual data to support the idea that atheists might be one of the most socially ostracized groups in the United States. Today, we're going to take a look at some of that data and speak with a social scientist who compiled it.
My name is Dr. Ryan Burge. I hold a PhD in political science from Southern Illinois University. I am a scholar of religion and politics, especially in the American context. I've published about 30 articles and book chapters in peer-reviewed outlets about religion and politics and the measurement of one or the other. I've written several books, including The Nuns. First edition and then second edition just came out, a book called 20 Myths About Religion and Politics in America. And I have a book coming out in August called The Great Dechurching with Jim Davis and Michael Graham, which are two pastors. Speaking of pastors, I'm also a pastor. I've been a pastor in the American Baptist Church for basically my entire adult life, 3 years as a youth pastor, and then 16 years as the senior pastor of First Baptist Church of Mount Vernon, Illinois. I've been married. My wife and I got married in 2007, and we have two boys who are 11 and 9.
You wrote an article recently on your Substack, right?
Graphsaboutreligion.com.
Graphsaboutreligion.com. The article is titled, Just How Much Do Americans Dislike Atheists? Now, some of my viewers might be like, wow, I've never heard a pastor say that atheists might actually be disliked rather than that they're ruling the U.S., you know? And you open up this article talking about how there are some narratives about evangelicals being the most persecuted group in America. I was personally taught that. Sounds like you were taught that. But you think that the data maybe makes a more complicated statement than that narrative. Is that accurate?
I mean, I'm always obsessed with persecution narratives. You see it on the left and on the right, right? Like, oh, the right always thinks the left hates us or trying to censor us, and the left thinks the right's trying to censor them. You know, it's everyone always tries to look for instances of persecution because it like means you're doing the right thing, quote unquote. And I think that in religion, like that is just like ground zero for finding persecution narratives. And if you grew up evangelical, you would hear it all the time, right? Like being a martyr was like the greatest thing you could possibly do. Like I was born in 1982. So Columbine happened when I was 12. And there was a story about a woman named Cassie Bernal who, you know, like no one can really confirm if it's true or not. But the shooters came into Columbine High School and said, do you believe in God? And she said yes, and they shot and killed her. At least that's how the story goes. And she is like revered in evangelical culture as like a martyr for the faith. And you get that in a lot of religious traditions. You know, Judaism has it, Islam has it, you know, even different cultures, like nationalistic cultures have it as well. So I think that these persecution narratives actually are really interesting from a sort of objective sociological perspective. And so I wanted to I had all these disparate pieces of data out there.
Gang, I forgot about that story. I have heard that story before. I there's no I don't know. My tendency is to question every Christian persecution narrative. But obviously, like I remember that story. I remember that story. Gang, that's fucked up. That is just utterly terrifying. It's just utterly terrifying. And wow, that's terrifying. Because I you know, I'm always afraid, you know, shit would go down to other. That's what I'm saying. Religiously motivated violence in any form, man. That type, that's crazy.
Like how people view atheists, and I wanted to kind of put them all into one cohesive. That's really what I do on my Substack. Is like I have all these like disparate pieces of data, and I want to make them
but
like
I do
into a
remember it.
cohesive
That is fucking
argument.
terrifying.
And this one is that atheists are probably the most disliked group in American society today.
Interesting. Okay, let's jump into some of the data, some of the graphs that you made out of the data. Thermometer score of various groups by political partisanship. Can you tell me what's going on here? This is a complex looking graph.
Boy, I
It is.
almost
So,
fell out this chair.
One of the
trees.
tools we use in
That
polling
shit
is
was a
called
hard
a
left.
feeling thermometer. It's been around for like 50 years.
A
And basically what
feeling
we ask folks to do is
thermometer?
place the following groups on a scale from 0, meaning very cold, to 100 being very hot, and 50 being like neutral. And so what I did was they always ask about these weird different groups, and it's kind of fun to see like where they put different groups in space. And so I broke it down by Democrat, Independent, Republican to kind of show you that like people think like the anti-atheist bias is just really a Republican thing. It's actually not. It's like an everybody thing, and that's kind of what the point is. So like if you look at the bottom of the graph, this was in 2012, by the way, so that kind of colors this a little bit. The Democrats put the Tea Party lowest, and that's so cute because like the Tea Party is like like that was pre-Donald Trump. They scored a 30, which is low, but if you go up the scale, like the next one is Christian fundamentalists at 42.1, and then atheists are right above that at 43.4. So like Democrats don't even like atheists that much. Average score is a 43. Amongst independents, they score a 39.1, which is like basically the same as Congress, which is the lowest of any group in there. And then amongst Republicans, they don't like, I love how, here's the 3 most hated groups by Republicans. Liberals at 31.7, the federal government at 32.8, and then atheists at 33. So like Republicans hate atheists as much as they hate the federal government.
But look, y'all, pre-Donald Trump, at least, at least the queer community was doing better than the atheist community. So atheists, just remember that. Just remember that. Because they're putting the queer community out on Front Street in the war on woke. Please, gang, please, could you imagine if fuckfaces like Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump were actually cognizant of a legitimate atheist movement, especially one that places emphasis on the intersection with electoral politics. Gang, please understand, you atheist motherfuckers would be out on Front Street with the queer community right the fuck now. And if you're not, it's only because you're fucking next.
And liberals. But I really just wanted to show people like how much, and if you look at like the groups that people like Christians score really well amongst Republicans. They score like a 78. So, you know, there's definitely on the right, even amongst Democrats, Christians do relatively well. They score a 68
fucking ridiculous
amongst Democrats. So
fucking
Christians
ridiculous.
are liked kind of universally.
Liars are liked
and
kind of
atheists are
universally.
sort of disliked universally on the left, right, and center.
And just being like,
nah,
I'm a grown ass man. I don't believe in magic. I don't believe there's a fucking curse on the world. I don't believe Jesus fucking titty Christ is coming back for me. That's just a ticket to fuck you city. Gang. When I say there's something wrong with this world, I literally mean there is something goddamn wrong with this world. What is going on with the human race?
spectrum. So it's not just a partisan thing.
It seems like when you break down Christian into smaller groups, though, like say Catholic, Mormon,
the groups.
that score goes down. When you say the word Christian, it seems like that's the most positive word to use, the word that people have the most positive things associated with, and then rank highly. Would you say that's right?
Yeah, and that's just because like Christians is like, I'm a Christian. You know, it's like a generic sort of like you can be a mainline Christian or a Catholic or you know what I mean? Like it's just so like amorphous, it doesn't really mean anything. And I think that's why it scores so high. Because
gang, can you realize that well, you know what? I ain't going front. We do have to break people up by groups, and there's some like, I'm mostly like all the groups that just describe groups of people. They're all just fine. They're all just up here. Just fucking people are people. But then I'm looking at like the military, the Supreme Court. Like yeah, they've got all these groups on here that they do trigger Congress. You know nobody likes fucking Congress. So it's weird. But then it's just interspersed with shit that shouldn't be on this list. It's kind of weird that people will just like put this shit out here on Front Street. I got to be honest. Like I guess maybe it's anonymous. Because I would feel a little bit weird participating in the survey. Like, hey, let me just rate who I think is, this is like. But then again, we've all got a shit list, gang. This is like self-awareness. We should all be looking through this list here and kind of, seeing how you would have it. Like, if you consider yourself an independent, do you agree with this? You've got working class people above the military, above the middle class, above Christians, above poor. Is that how this fucking works? This is fucking, like I say, this is some weird ass shit, gang.
Also, the other thing is people like what they are. You know what I mean? Like very few people are self-hating. Like I'm a Christian and I hate Christians. No one says that. So like that's why they do well across the
Except
board.
white people.
I mean,
white people
they're
love
not
saying
doing
they
as
hate
well
white
as like
people.
working class people though. Notice that. Like working class people score higher than Christians do. Right. Actually, I always love to look at these and go, if I was going to run for president.
Gang, and I'm just going to go ahead. You wanted to say it, so I'm going to say it for you. If a black person did that, we call him a coon. Yeah. Yeah. If a black person did that, we call him a coon because they'd be a fucking coon. That's a bit of a double standard. I'm going to give him that. That is a bit of a double standard. It's totally cool for white people to be like, I fucking hate white people. We're like, But if black person's like, I hate black people, we're like, you're a fucking coon. You're a fucking coon, straight up. That's just how it is, gang. That's the motherfucking gravity of fucking social life right there. It's just the way it is.
How would I hit all these things the right way? Like I love working class people and I love middle class people and I love Christians and I like the military a lot. Okay, everyone's with me. Like that's how you win an election.
You see a lot of that throughout like all of American history, or maybe especially in the 20th century.
Populism works on the left and the right now, right? Like everybody's like, I'm for the working man and all that. And Biden's even talking about Bidenomics, right? From the middle out and all this stuff. I mean, I think there's still, no matter what, we're still going to be a country that loves the working class, like the underdog, the person who grew up without anything. Like that's the kind of person we love. When it comes to religion, though, I think that this is in 2012. I wonder if we did this again, if it would look the same. Like I think Christianity would probably go down the list a little bit for Democrats and atheists would go up. I'm not saying that atheists would get universally loved, but I think they'd probably score a little bit higher because they've grown significantly as a share of the population in the last 10 years. And you don't have that many self-hating atheists. So that would probably raise it just by natural, progression that way.
Okay, now the next graph was particularly interesting to me because
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. It's kind of fun. If we're gonna fucking watch this shit and play along, that is a fun thing to imagine, is like how these scales have shifted. I think it's fun, at least from my seat, because back in 2012, I think I would have still been identifying as a Christian, probably ish. So, and then now definitely not. And so I guess I'd be part of that changing number, and it'd be interesting to see, especially in light of Trumpism and all of this other evangelical madness. Yeah.
let's just say that it has some personal meaning to me. Share saying that they would be unhappy if a member of their immediate family married either a born-again Christian or someone who doesn't.
Gang, could you imagine sitting around the dinner table doing this, like with your family members? Hey, gang, all right, fam, hey, haven't seen you in a while. It's good to catch up. How's school? Oh, everything's good. Oh, you still playing basketball? Oh, that's great. Wonderful. All right, yeah, let's play a little family game. All right, we're going to go around and see. All right, so like, how pissed off would you be if your spouse married someone from Syria? Like, what? Like, what? Why are we not mad at us? Just this is a weird question. Gang, it's cool. Like, it's research. People do this stuff, and it's like important. It's important research. I mean, this is like nice data if you can get it. It's just sometimes we got to sit here and think. Like, this is a thing people did. Like, people got funding and they got paid. This was like their job to like do this research, and then they had to like survey people, and then people had to like sit there and answer these awkward ass questions, and then somebody had to collate it and write about it. Then there was reviewers. It's just a lot to go through over these awkward ass questions. Like I said, great data if you could fucking get it, but good on you, man.
Believe in God. Can you break down the results here?
Yeah, I love this Pew question. Like, sometimes Pew really does a good job
Pew
of like
don't,
trying
Pew
to
don't give a fuck, y'all.
Conceptualize
they will
this
ask
in a very
you all
practical
your
way.
shit.
Like, do you dislike atheists? Is a bad polling question, okay? Because it just doesn't work. But if you can like
Hey, they gotta get them clicks too,
operationalize that in a certain context, like what happens if your son or daughter married an atheist? Like, that changes everything. That's where the rubber meets the road. And so Pew asked these in 2014, and the one thing I want to point out to start with is, overall, only 9% of Americans say they would be unhappy if their kid, someone in their family, which is basically, let's say their kid, married a born-again Christian. Only 9% would be unhappy if their family member married a born-again Christian.
All right, kids I'm never going to have. Let me just keep it real with you. I'm severely disappointed in you for marrying a Christian. It's just I just was hoping you could establish a new family legacy that has both feet on the motherfucking ground. And I don't really want indoctrinated grandchildren. Am I being too real, gang? Look, I'm just dire. Look, I don't have any fucking kids, gang. I'm not fucking hating on anybody because I don't have kids. I don't have a real family. So I could just be my truest, bravest, meanest self because it's a fantasy.
49% would be
and
unhappy
in this
if they
fantasy,
married
that's an appropriate thing to say to someone.
a person who doesn't believe in God. So like it's, like this whole like evangelicals are persecuted. You look at this and go, no, what?
Exactly.
No.
I'm trying to give these evangelicals. I think evangelicals need a bit more persecution. Look, you guys it's so weird that the most privileged, dominant class that literally you cannot be elected without pretending you are part of this fucked up ass cult actually goes around talking about how much they're persecuted. And literally we're just like, yeah.
Their kid marrying an evangelical. And if you look, obviously white evangelicals do not want their kid to, like 77% of white evangelicals be grumpy if their kid married an atheist, which sort of makes sense.
I think that this family context is hugely important. At least for me, the main way that I have experienced, I guess we can call it ostracization, has been within more of a close friends and family context.
It's a tough one.
So seeing this graph specifically, I think really speaks to me, and I think will speak to a lot of my audience too.
Thanks for sharing. Also, whoa.
And also notice how amongst like atheist agnostics, 28% of them would be mad if someone in their family married an evangelical, but 13% would be mad if someone in their family married an atheist, which kills me. It's like, I'm an atheist. I don't want my family marrying an atheist. I want to be the only atheist in my family. That's what it feels like. Like they're going to crowd me out or something like that. So it's like, it's not symmetrical. You know what I mean? Like the animus is not even both directions. There's a lot more evangelical anti-atheist bias than there is atheist anti-evangelical bias, which I think kind of explodes the narrative of evangelicals are way more persecuted.
I honestly also, I just got to be honest. Like, I do think that there's a way in which, at least for me, I think there is something about a secular perspective that, like, you kind of just get down to the practicals, and I don't see a lot. Okay, like there is like I joke about the whole faith thing, but like because I think it's hard. Like I imagine for people who are serious about their faith, or people who are serious about atheism, you could see the butting of the heads over that. But there's nothing that's going to stop us from being attracted to each other, from working with each other and being a part of things together, and going down that road. And then for a lot of people, it just feels like if it's about the practicals, like it's just about like, do you enjoy that person? Can you get together on how to spend your time, and then later you just start tackling shit together, one thing at a time, kind of, right? So I myself, like, honestly, like I went through a phase where I was like, I'm there now. Like I'll explain the whole loop to you. So I started basically in a place where I didn't start, but I ended up in a place where I was like, I'm not going to date anybody that's a religious believer. And that's kind of my starting point now. But in reality, like, if I found there's still no reason you can't have a relationship with a religious individual. It's just more like, I expect it to be important to people, and that like a lot of times they're not going to be interested, and it's just not going to work because they just would rather be with somebody religious, or they're not going to accept the idea of being with somebody who's not a believer or whatever. And honestly, for the most part, that's just kind of how it is. But setting that aside, like, it's not like we couldn't make it work. So it's I don't know. There have been religious people in my life. I've talked about it a little bit, but there have been religious people in my life since I've been an atheist that I've been interested in dating or whatever, and it just hasn't worked out. But that's mostly, I think, because of, like he's saying, unfortunately, like it was more their inability to wrap their heads around being with an atheist than it was my inability to wrap my head around being with a Christian. Like, at the end of the day, like, if I'm interested in somebody and I fall for them, like, the fact that they're Christian is not going to fucking stop me.
And now I'm seeing nothing in particular here. It seems like there's actually more bias here against someone who doesn't believe in God among people who are just not religious in any particular way, versus there's a little bit less for born-again Christians. You would think that would be different, but I guess not.
I think nothing in particular. People actually are actively rejecting the atheist. They're actively rejecting. They're rejecting religion for sure, right? By saying there's nothing in particular.
Yeah. All right. So I get what you guys are saying. Like that's kind of where I'm at. But it's like it just went. I guess I'm just saying it's a soft policy for me. The thing here's the reason I think it's I'm okay with it, right? It's because I don't think they're gonna be happy, right? Like there's this weird thing where, like, I don't know, like part of maturing and for me, like, has just been accepting where, like, you can realize you're not the ideal person for somebody, and like that's okay. Like you don't have to make like a statement of let's prove to the world that we can overcome this. It's like, no, you'd probably just rather date a Christian guy, and I'd probably rather date somebody who's not going to be trying to please Jesus instead of Jason. So that's a reasonable, irreconcilable difference, right? Like, but a Christian girl has stolen my heart, and we'll just put it that way.
But I also think by them not saying they're atheist agnostic, they're actually actively pushing back on the other side too. So they kind of live in this weird in between.
Oh, is it cutting out on you guys? That's
between not atheist agnostic but not religious either. And I think you can kind of like
my
I want to
computer's
do
probably
more
going to
with
freeze
that
any
group
minute, so
specifically, like try to figure out
it's a precursor.
who do they dislike more, the religious people or atheist agnostics. The assumption is they're none, so they're going to have more affinity towards atheist agnostics, but I don't think that's true. I think they might have more. They might be more angry at the atheist agnostics than they are at the religious people. But again, I've got to sort that out. Hopefully, in this next project I'm working on, that'll be part of the goal, is to tease that.
Thanks,
apart.
Logan.
I've had plenty of people in my comments section, especially when I've talked about your work, say that, oh, the nuns, they are effectively atheists and agnostics.
That's funny, Xfinity. No, I have fucking AT&T. I hate Comcast. Let's just say that's the name of my router. I'm like a fiber optic kind of dude. Like, I went fiber in my old place, and AT&T was the only fiber place option I have in my new place. But yeah, I fucking hate Comcast. I just wanted to just commiserate on the fucking pure hatred of fuck Comcast. Comcast can go fuck itself. Comcast can burn in a lake of eternal fire with the weeping and the gnashing of teeth and all that shit. I don't feel bad. It's a fucking corporations are not people. I disagree with the fucking Supreme Court and all that shit. Comcast can go fuck itself, sit on a spike, rotate, all that fucking torturous fucking shit. Comcast, go fuck yourself.
But they for some reason are self-hating, or they just refuse to take on the label that really does describe them. And you've talked about in your work that belief and belonging are not the same thing. So yes, some people at least, or even a large portion of people who are nothing in particular when it comes to religion, might fit the definition of agnostic or atheist when it comes to what they believe. But where they identify, how they identify, who they think they belong to, might be very different than that. I've certainly met people that was the case for.
I honestly think in some ways the most maligned group in America is nothing in particulars, because atheist agnostics don't want to claim them.
Yeah.
Like, if I show a graph where it says like the people who are most likely to be non-religious are the least educated people, which is true, statistically a fact. The atheist agnostics go, wait, no, don't lump us in with the nothing in particulars. Don't do that. But then when I say, well, the nuns are 30%, and I add the nothing in particulars to get to that, they go, oh, look at us. We're rising quickly.
Yes. Oh, my gosh. Yeah, I've seen that so many times.
You can't pick them when you like them and then kick them out when you don't. They're part of you. And the thing is, no one advocates for them. No one talks about them. They don't have any organizations built around them. They're floating in social and cultural space. They're sort of left out and left behind and lost and unmoored. And they're, to me, as a social scientist and a pastor, they're really troublesome. Because I feel like no one is fighting for me. No one is advocating for me like atheists.
No. I disagree with that. You know who those people are? First off, they're probably maybe a lot of them are just people who just don't give a shit. But that's it. Like that's who they are. Like they're people who don't want to be bothered. Like, there's nothing wrong with the situation. Like it's like kind of like I get ignored. I get annoyed even with like agnostics. Like I get annoyed with these weak ass agnostics who know they don't believe in God and just need to just go ahead and admit that they're atheists. I don't care how people don't like to hear people say that. Look, I do think agnostic's a fucking weasel word, because the answer to the question of do you believe in God is no. But whatever, like that's their prerogative, right? And these other people who don't want to be bothered, like that's their prerogative too. And it's just like a pastor's instinct. He's got that pastoral instinct. Like, he just sees a group of people who he's like, oh, maybe why isn't anybody serving them? Why isn't anybody fighting for them? Maybe we go come bring the gospel. Come on, bring the gospel. Like, leave them people alone. Like they chilling, they ordering Chinese food, watching Netflix with their partners, playing video games. They're good. Like, they don't need to be part of this.
agnostics have these great organizations that, Freedom from Religion
We
Foundation.
don't. We really don't have these great organizations. We also don't have great media outlets. We also don't have great media coverage. Please don't believe the hype.
The American Association of Separation of Church and State. Like, there are great organizations that fight for these kind of causes. There's no one that fights for nothing in particulars. And it's unfortunate because there are 23% of the population, and amongst young people, it's a third. It's the plurality. It is nothing in particular, and yet no one talks about them. And they should. They're just getting kicked around by everyone, and it seems just
they're
so
literally not part of the conversation.
This is a good place to move on to the next graph. Do you have a favorable or unfavorable view of the following groups? You start with the Church of Scientology here, and it goes all the way down to Protestantism. Can you break this down for me?
This is YouGov data, which is great. YouGov is like this polling firm that does all kinds of weird, they did one yesterday about like, who do you blame for the recession? Like, what factors do you blame for like the economy right now? And it's like Democrats, Republicans, gas prices, stuff. They do all these cool polls they drop every once in a while. And they basically did this one where they had all these different groups and asked people if they had positive, negative, or really no impression of these groups. And like people hate Scientology. Don't Scientology, please don't send me a cease and desist letter. I don't care. Like, you can be whatever you want to be a Scientologist, doesn't bother me. But 66% of Americans have an unfavorable view of Scientology, which is like insanely high. It goes Scientology.
Dang, look, atheists, please understand, this is a big F you to us. I don't like any of the groups on this list. There's nothing good about being on this list. Like, no group on this list is popular. So they just assume they could put us in with a bin of people that and then we end up like middling. Oh, this is
Satanism.
This is a weird ass list to
right?
be
20-point gap. And then Jehovah's Witnesses, and then FLDS, which is the fundamentalist Latter-day Saints. Those are the people who, like, Warren Jeffs was their prophet, and he molested all those girls.
Also, we're just a little out of place.
Awful group. And then Christian Science. These are all small groups, by the way. Let's keep that in mind. Like, these are not numerically large groups. And then Islam is next. So that's a large group. That's like 1% of America. So that's 43%.
And this is the cowardice gap right here. See the cowardice gap, this 38% here versus this 29% here. And again, we'd have to see how these numbers changed, but this is the cowardice gap. This is why agnostics. This is why so many people identify agnostic, because they're like literally like, I'm not wearing that fucked up ass atheist label. That atheist label. Oh boy, that atheist label comes with some shit I do not want to deal with. Nope, no part. Nope, not me. I'm an agnostic. I don't know. I just don't know. I've never thought about it. I've never considered the proposition.
Not FLDS, like the mainstream Mormon church is not very well liked. And then it goes Wicca at 40% unfavorable. And then atheist at 38% unfavorable. It is of those groups that are above it, atheism is larger than all those groups.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's really the most disliked large quote unquote religious group in America. And then agnostics are further down at 28% unfavorable.
You already know,
which puts them right around Pentecostals,
so we can let them go.
Which is weird.
It's weird. It's not good, man.
And the Falun Gong, which is like this weird fringe like movement that most
people
don't even understand.
That's what I'm saying. There's nothing good about being on this list.
Atheists score pretty darn high on the unfavorable metric around some company that is not well liked,
Yeah, definitely. But I want to point one thing out is that you're seeing a really large portion of people being pretty indifferent. 39% of people seem rather indifferent about atheism.
That's a great point. I think the general public's common view on this question is live and let live, right? Like, I think, honest to God, when it comes to religion, most Americans are like, hey, whatever works for you is cool with me. Just keep it to yourself, you know? And I think that's what you see is like in a lot of these, like the middle response, which is like neither favorable nor unfavorable, runs like 40-50%. Yeah. So the general sense here is there's some groups that are really not liked. And there's some groups where it's like, but the majority view in America is like a big shrug of the shoulders for most groups. So I don't think there's like active, there's not a ton of like active hate towards atheists. And I don't have the raw data for this survey, but I bet you dollars on us if you pulled out the evangelicals, the unfavorables for atheists
the chances
would
are if you go to somebody else's church, bro,
teens,
like this is the messaging I don't like. This is the this is that. No, there's no problem here. The problem is the messaging. And again, this is like really covert. You know what? We need to talk about, maybe it's like systematic, right? Or structural prejudice against atheists, right? The fact that we don't have representation in the government, the fact that as a result of that, the government is constantly inundated with religiously motivated legislation that then atheists are forced to live under, as well as everybody else. The fact that these groups have such gang. We need to do always more like the why I no longer go to church sermons like these, because all you have to do is walk into a church and sit down and listen to what they say. And you will realize that the very core of the message preached in churches across America on Sunday morning is fundamentally anti-atheist. It's like the elephant in the room that to me nobody wants to speak of. Speaking of elephant in the room, I'm gonna let the tape roll because Stephanie's gonna go live, and I want to make sure we wrap up and have time to go over there.
You go on to discuss that exact point. Let's take a look at this one. What is your personal attitude toward members of the following religious groups?
This is General Social Survey, which is like the Rolls Royce of survey data. It's done since 1972. And they added this question randomly. I don't really know why. They just do stuff like this sometimes. But the question is, what is your personal attitude towards members of the following religious group? And this is atheists. I mean, amongst Democrats, it's 34% positive, 23% negative, and then 43% neutral. So that's like plus 11. That ain't bad. Biden's not plus 11 right now. Biden's like -8, I think. Amongst independents, it's
The
0, 24
and the
positive, 24
Glavinoids.
negative, 52 neither. So like
Legendary
right in the
Uncle
middle, right? So
Bobbyism.
no feelings there. And even amongst Republicans, it's only 34% negative and 23% positive. It's actually a mirror image of the Democrats, right? So they're 23-34. The Republicans are 34-23. So like they basically offset each other in the grand scheme of things. But even amongst Republicans, it's only 1/3 of Republicans who have an unfavorable or a negative view of atheists in 2018. Yeah. That ain't terrible. Like it's not good, certainly, but it's not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, so we don't seem to be talking about massive swaths of people that absolutely hate atheists, think that they're horribly immoral and really should just be completely eradicated from public life. We're talking about a small minority of people who dislike atheists, and then with plenty of people who are a part of those people's same group saying, I don't really care either way. Is that right?
Unfortunately,
That's a problem.
The human mind is not well equipped to understand statistics. We're primed for story. Like the example I always give is when they had the rollout of the COVID vaccine, right? And they were giving out millions of shots a day, like nationwide. You would hear like this one story about this one guy in Florida who got the COVID shot, and 6 hours later he was dead. We're like, oh God, the COVID shot. You don't hear about the planes that land safely. And in those days, like millions of planes were landing safely every day as people were getting the COVID shot and not getting COVID. Right. So you might have one instance, right, where someone is discriminated against because of their race or their gender or their belief system or lack of belief system, whatever it is. But the data says overall that is an outlier event, and that is not indicative of the general consensus about Americans and their view of atheists.
All right, let's move on to, I believe this is the final graph here.
Yeah, last graph.
It is necessary to believe in God in order to be a moral person.
Right, so I wanted to just talk a little bit about the structural thing. Like that's a big part of this problem is a lot of people work in places where opening up about their atheism would, if not subject them to severe like alienation, would very likely mean the end of their upward mobility in that company. There are so many companies that are literally just happy to go the extra mile to put on a happy Christian face. there are a lot of places you can live where it severely restricts your mating and social opportunities. That, you know, that's a huge part of it. And then to me, again, like, a lot of it is this sort of blind hate, I'm going to call it, where it's very much like where a lot of Christians would say, you know, that they're not against homosexual people or queer people, but then they are against the act, or, you know, oh, it's just that it's, you know, sex outside. Like, there's always some twisted shit, right? It's the same thing here. If you poll a lot of Christians, their inability to say that they hate anybody or be honest or self-reflective about their prejudices, sure, it's nice that a lot of them will say they don't have a problem with atheists. But ask them how they feel about godlessness, right? Ask them, you know, how they feel about, you know, people who don't have God as the head of their lives or whatever, or how they feel about, you know, or ask them about the particular claims of their religion. You know what I mean? Like, those are the things. So then you realize when you hear this person's ideas or how they really feel, like, that's the issue. So if you ask them if they hate atheists, sure. And then if you turn around and go, so, oh, you're okay with godless? I say, whoa, no, I didn't say that, right? And that's where we have a problem. Because if you're going to say you're okay with atheists, you need to be okay with godlessness. And you need to put godlessness on the same par with godliness. Because if you say, oh, I'm okay with godless people, but godliness is above, and so then my right to be godly and my desire to see things run according to God's plan and God's will and have God's people elevated and blessed and all of this shit, right? Even your desire for blessings, what is that? That is literally you saying, I want to be blessed. What do you mean? What the fuck does that actually mean? I want, as a believer, to be favored, to have privileges, material comfort, opportunities, in all of this shit that you will not get as a non-believer, because I want to be blessed as a benefit to according to my faith. Yeah, that's some anti-atheist bullshit right there. Like that. See, that's where I'm at, gang. Like, it's so. I feel like this conversation is okay. Like, I haven't said anything troubling in this video, but it's like, this is like step one. Like, we're just doing the. So do you think these people should be tortured and executed tomorrow morning by the government? Oh, you said no? Okay, cool. That's good. Well, nothing to see here. Nobody hates atheists. Atheists are good to go. Gang, like, this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is just people who are willing to say, yeah, I think atheism is fucked up, or yeah, I have a negative emotion towards these people. We're not really getting to the meat and potatoes of what relegates atheists to second-class citizenhood.
Have good values. This is starting with evangelical Christians. Let's go through this.
Yeah, evangelicals are the only group where clearly a majority says you have to believe in God to be a moral person and have good values. 70% of evangelicals believe that. Amongst Catholics, it's 48%, which is basically like half. You know, statistically, it's half. And then the entire sample average was 41%. So you put 5 people in a room, and only 2 people out of 5 believe that you have to believe in God in order to be moral and have good values. So 3 out of 5 don't believe that. So, you know, like, I started this by saying, like, look how discriminated atheists are. And then I kind of give you data that says, yeah, they are, but, like, it's not as bad as you think it is. The average American's not walking around going, you're going to hell because you don't believe in God. They're like, I believe in God and I think God's cool. But if you don't, you're probably okay. You know, that's not the predominant view is very much sort of a laissez-faire libertarian view of atheists. By the way, I love the fact that
and again, that is the fucking problem. And it's sitting on some bullshit, because the average person who will tell you that, gang, is fucking lying to you. They are fucking lying to you. How do I know? What you do is you put a hidden camera on that motherfucker. And then you okay, that bullshit that you heard about, oh yeah, I happen to believe in God and I think God's cool, but if you don't, yeah, you're probably okay too. I'm gonna roll my dice here and bet my money on it is Monday through Saturday. Yeah, what you're gonna do with that hidden camera is you're gonna follow that person on Sunday fucking morning, and you're gonna notice that that person is gonna walk into the big ass building of the organization that does not pay any taxes at all, run by a bunch of people who do not have any other full-time job, and then he's going to be hallelujah and amening, talking about how, God, you are the source of my goodness, and no good comes without you, Lord, and no, Jesus, Jesus, can I lick your booty hole now, because you're the Savior, and all that good comes from you. Get the fuck up out of here. That motherfucker is lying to you, and all you have to do is watch his ass on Sunday fucking morning. I promise you that.
You just think that you have to believe in God. This is something actually, like, it's actually a good point. The more you look at data, if that number was 0, I'd be very suspicious because there's always like wiggle. There's like slop in data all the time, and it never lines up like perfectly. If it does, that's good evidence that your data's cooked, right? Like that it's been manipulated improperly.
Yeah.
So when you have a little like play in it like that, that makes me go, okay, that's good data, because there's stuff in it that makes no like logical sense, because the a share of the American public makes no logical sense.
Right. Yeah. People can fill out a question wrongly or misunderstand it, or just have an opinion that is very different than something you might predict. Right.
And that's okay. Like, that's what we want to see. To me, it's actually a validity check more than like, oh, that's so stupid. Like, sometimes I post graphs like this, go, look at that idiot over there who believes this thing. I go, listen, that's actually a good thing, man. Like, that's showing us that the data actually works.
Check my claim here. I want to run this by you. It seems like there's not a significant enough number of people just generally in America that say that atheists are immoral, to say that atheists generally in, day to day are going to be discriminated against. They're going to get kicked out of stores. They're going to, they're probably not going to experience persecution on a day-to-day basis in the way that certain minority groups might have in, like, Jim Crow era, right? It's not the same thing. However, it seems like there's a significant enough of portion of certain rather powerful or influential groups that politicians may be able to appeal to them and appeal to the idea that atheists suck, in order to kind of shore up support from people who have that opinion. I want to run that by you. What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a lot. I think there's something to be said. Like, there's always this like thing you have to have Darth Vader to be Luke Skywalker.
All right, this is the problem. And this is why you can't, I hate to say this, you can't send a preacher to do this work. This is why we all was like, did he say he's a minister? Because again, we're ignoring, to me, the problem. Gang, I just do not give a fuck about Americans whitewashing their bigotry. I just don't. I just don't. Oh yeah, I don't have a problem with this group. Americans say that shit all the time. I don't have a problem with this group. I don't have a problem with that group. They're just lying. They're just full of shit. And the fucked up thing is, it's in the fucking doctrine. This is no different than Christians telling you that, again, they're okay with the LGBTQ community, but then they're going to be in that church on Sunday, dog whistling about family values and Sunday morning and parental rights and all of these fucking dog whistles, and they're just going to be amening and alleluiaing all along with that shit. And that is the fucking problem. They believe in a faith that fundamentally is prejudiced against non-believers. That's it. And anything they do in their faith, which is everything they do, including how they fucking work and live and run their lives and who they socialize with and who they do business. And again, gang, it's the same shit. It's the same motherfuckers. They will look you in your face and be like, I'm not a Christian nationalist. Why? Because they know Christian nationalist equals bad. But then they will turn around on Sunday morning and they'll be like, I want to send my kid to a school where his third grade teacher is a good Christian who's going to teach him Christian values, and I want to go to a Christian grocer, and I love that my pharmacist is a Christian, and oh my God, did I tell you about the young lady I met at Wendy's? She was such a good Christian. She was telling me about how she just came to the Lord, and now I only go to Wendy's on my lunch break when I need fast food because I love that little Christian girl. And they are not Christian nationalist, gang. They just want to live in a Christian nation. Or as they've now euphemistically dubbed it, a nation that's predominantly Christian. You have to see that it's literally face value fucking discrimination. It is right there in the fucking guidebook. It is in the fucking policies. It is in the fucking procedures. It is in the motherfucking handbook.
You know, I mean, you got to have like a reference case. Interesting thing I learned in grad school. You know, one of the hardest groups to raise money for is in America, an advocacy group, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. You know why?
Huh.
Because there's no mothers for drunk drivers.
Yeah, I would assume not.
Yeah, so like you need an enemy. You know, like you need to create an enemy that may not exist, or maybe only exists like in a very like diminished form, but you need to like build them up as being like a bigger version of that, and then you can rebel against that and push against that, you know, straw man that you've created. And I think for a lot of Republicans, atheists are that thing that they've created. Now, they're the other part of this, though, like the other side of the coin is they're actually growing. Like about 6% of Americans today identify as atheists. It was 3% in 2008. So it's absolutely growing. It's actually not growing that much in the last 5 years, though, which I think is interesting. I think we're hitting like a cap. Even amongst the youngest Americans, only like 7 or 8% are atheists. So it's not like there's like this huge oncoming wave of atheists, but they are growing. And in 2020, 45% of Joe Biden's coalition that won him the White House were non-religious voters.
Interesting.
So it's like you got to hold these two ideas in tension, right? Which is like, Republicans are making a mountain out of a molehill when it comes to, you know, atheists in American culture, but they also, the nuns are actually kind of being a bigger force in American politics at the same time. I think everyone lives their own life, right? And everyone's experience is different when it comes to persecution and things like that. The one advantage atheists have is you could probably go your entire life and never tell a single soul you're an atheist and be just fine. You know, like you almost have to volunteer.
Gang, that is the fucking problem. Please understand this is where me and this man violently disagree. I think it is a cowardly... listen, if you can't because of your safety or your economic despair or whatever it is, there are legitimate reasons. But gang, we need people to live their truth. Can you imagine? Because he could just as easily say, hey, you know, there are a lot of things you could say that you can live without sharing. You can live without, you don't have to tell anybody. You can keep it to yourself. Okay, I accept it, but why don't you just keep it to your, you know? I accept it, but they don't. So maybe just keep it to yourself, you know? You're good with me here, but maybe you're not good with them there. So maybe keep it to yourself, you know? Gang, I think we have the right to live as loud as Christians and other believers do, as non-believers. And I think in this time when we see religion being politicized and used as an instrument of social oppression, that to me is where it starts to push into the land of the right thing to do, if not some kind of obligation.
That like no one has, it's not a skin color, it's not a gender, it's not a sexual orientation, right? Where you can go your entire life and avoid church, especially in the culture we're in right now, where it's just totally fine to not be religious and not say that you're an atheist. So I think that, you know, if you choose to roll that identity out and you make it central to who you are, like, and then again,
what did he do before, right? The people who do that, he just criticized atheists for including them. Right, he just suggested, if you're an atheist, you don't have to identify as an atheist. Just, you know, just walk away from this whole thing and not be part of it. But before, when we tried to include the people who just walked away and said they don't want to be part of it as atheists and nuns, that was an issue. Again, whatever, gang. It's just a video. You're
probably going to catch more crap on the way back because you've decided to make that part of who you are. And that's just a decision you have to make personally. Is it worth it to me? How important is it for me to be this way publicly?
Dr. Ryan Burge, thank you very much for coming on and talking to us today. I hope that this video ends up being a valuable resource for both Christians and atheists, and just people in general who are wanting to explore this idea of atheists being ostracized in American society. So thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for watching. I've been Drew of Genetically Modified Skeptic. A special thanks to my patrons for their constant love and support. If you want to hear more from me, then subscribe. As always, if you are an apostate in need, if you are experiencing persecution or ostracization, there are resources linked in the description to help you find community and mental health support.
All right, so gang, we have landed safely in our destination. I really appreciate you guys all for being here. For me, like, you know, I think the numbers bear out that this is something to be taken seriously, just on the surface of people's willingness to openly identify that they dislike atheists, or, you know, or where we were ranked relative to certain groups. I mean, if you hear how disgusting people talk about the Congress, for instance, and they'll talk about how corrupt they are and they're ruining the world and and then they'll be like, and you'll be like, but you have them 7 points higher than atheists. That's kind of fucked up. So there's definitely a lot of fucked up perception there. But to me, again, I'm thinking, and maybe this is helpful to me because it's helped me realize that's not. This type of conversation, those type of numbers to me aren't even getting at the heart of the issue. And it is making me realize that my problem is the structure. It is the structural and systematic things that work against atheists, that are unfair and unbalanced. I do think there's deep-seated prejudice against atheists, deep-seated. And again, that's part of it too. Just like part of racism is implicit racism versus explicit. It's all of that, right? In other words, it is systematic. It is baked into the institutions. But on a personal level, it's deeper than what we are cognizantly aware of, you know, in sort of the forefront of our mind. In other words, there's a lot of us who are not aware of how prejudiced or racist we are personally. And I think the same thing would apply to atheists. So people might think they don't really have a problem with atheism, and they might genuinely think that. But again, if we asked a different set of questions, I think we could get at a real bias and prejudice that's not going to show up in such a simple poll. And that is saying that I do think there's deep-seated personal prejudice that people have against atheism, that they're just not being primed to think about. And then there's the structural and institutional stuff. But yeah, I hope I can find some opportunity to talk about this stuff more. That might have to get us into intersectionality with other social and political issues, because again, this is just something that the atheist and counter-apologetics community is not addressing to my satisfaction. So certainly if something comes up, please drop it in the discourse or let me know. Or maybe we'll try to, maybe we'll make something if we can't find something. But yeah, I appreciate you guys for being here. I want to wrap up so that Stephanie Helms we can go over to Stephanie Helms if she's not going already. But catch me over there tonight. We'll be watching Stephanie's stream and Gather, hanging out with the gang. And that's what we'll be hanging out, gaming, having some fun this weekend. So please join us and Gather. There's a link in the description. Otherwise, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Yeah, we have a fun weekend coming up, and look forward to seeing you guys next time. Thanks so much for being here. All right, gang.